All right, let's just dive right in. There's a conversation we really need to have about the nature of our work, and, well, it's not an easy one. It's about that sense of stability we've all come to rely on, that daily rhythm that feels so, permanent.
It really does, doesn't it? It feels so solid. You wake up, you log on, you get things done. It's a routine that seems almost unshakable. But what we're going to unpack today is this idea that while we've been busy with that routine, the very ground beneath our feet has completely, and I mean completely, changed.
Just think about your day. You're still working, your calendar's probably packed, your inbox is, I'm sure, overflowing.
Right.
The projects are still active, the deadlines are still very real. From the outside, and honestly, even from the inside, it feels like the whole machinery of professional life is humming along just like it always has.
You're still jumping into meetings, still responding to those never-ending email chains. You're adding your expertise, your analysis, your value.
You feel like a necessary part of the workflow. Your contribution is still being asked for, and it's still being accepted. There are absolutely no obvious signs that anything is wrong.
And you're still delivering on those requests. The reports get filed, those presentations get built, the quarterly targets are being met. On the surface, it is the very definition of business as usual.
Exactly. All the signals look normal. But what we're arguing here is that this surface-level normalcy is incredibly deceptive. It's actually masking a much deeper, a tectonic shift that has already happened. The rules of the entire game have been rewritten while we were all just busy playing our parts.
And this is the question that gets to the absolute heart of it. What if the real threat isn't the one we've all been taught to look out for? It's not some robot that's going to come and physically replace you on an assembly line.
No, it's something far more profound. And for everyone in our community here at The Effective Professional, this is the one distinction you have to grasp. The risk isn't that your tasks are being automated. The risk is that your core professional asset, your very ability to think, to analyze, to connect the dots, is no longer a rare commodity.
So let's really break that down. For years, the whole conversation about AI was focused on automating repetitive, predictable work. Data entry, basic chatbots, manufacturing. We can call that phase one.
Right. But this is phase two, and it's a completely different animal. This isn't about copying muscle memory anymore. It's about replicating and scaling cognitive labor. We're talking about the complex, analytical thinking that was, until just a moment ago, the exclusive and very highly valued territory of experienced human professionals.
Think about it. What is your career capital really built on? For most of us, it's our ability to navigate ambiguity, to find the signal in all the noise, to take a mountain of raw information and turn it into a coherent strategy. That ability was your strategic advantage. It was rare, and because it was rare, it was incredibly valuable. Companies paid a premium for it. But technology has this long history of taking things that are rare and expensive and turning them into utilities, making them abundant and cheap. Think about electricity or computing power. And now it is doing the exact same thing to intelligence itself. Wow. This slide really just lays it all out, doesn't it? The column on the left, that's been the playbook for every successful knowledge worker for the last half-century. That's what we were trained to do. It's what we get paid to do.
But then you look at the right column. And these aren't just things AI can do. This is now its default, its baseline function. This isn't some special feature, it's the new operating system. The very skills that used to be a human's key differentiator are now a machine's standard equipment. The entire foundation of our value is being systematically eroded right out from under us.
And then you have this layer, the part that's just impossible for us to compete with on a purely biological level. An AI doesn't need a coffee break. It doesn't get decision fatigue after a day packed with back-to-back meetings. It never ever gets overwhelmed when you dump a data set with 10 million rows on its desk at 4 p.m. on a Friday.
It operates without any of the built-in limitations that we have. No fatigue, no time delay, no cognitive overload. And this creates a silent, but an absolutely relentless performance gap. It's a fundamental shift in capability that just scales, and scales 24/7 forever.
And this quote here, it just cuts through all the noise, doesn't it? It boils it all down to the fundamental economics of the situation. It's not personal. It's just the brutal, simple reality of supply and demand.
That's exactly right. The second your core skill can be replicated instantly, on demand, at a massive scale, and for a near-zero marginal cost, its market value is destined to plummet. Now, this isn't a new idea. But what is completely new is that this principle is now being applied to the very act of thinking itself.
And this is where the threat gets even deeper. Because we're not just talking about AI getting better at doing individual tasks anymore. We are now talking about it absorbing the entire cognitive process.
What do you mean by that? The whole process?
I mean the entire journey, the whole path from a messy, undefined business problem all the way to a structured, actionable solution. That entire workflow is being compressed into a single automated system. And this has been the model for our entire careers, right? A problem comes in, we apply our experience, our judgment, our analytical skills. That's the middle box, human cognition, and then we produce a solution on the other side.
And that middle step, that was everything. That was our entire value proposition. It was the black box that only a trained, experienced human mind could navigate. We were paid to be the essential bridge connecting the problem to the solution.
So the critical point here is that the gap itself, the very space we were paid to occupy, to live in professionally, is shrinking at a terrifying rate. It's being compressed into nothing. If an AI can take the problem from step 1 and generate the solution in step 3 almost instantly, then the space for step 2, for our human intervention, it starts to become, well, optional. It's just no longer a mandatory part of the process. And this leads to what might be the most insidious part of this whole transition. It's what the source material calls a silent demotion. You don't get a dramatic pink slip. The change is much, much quieter than that.
It's a shift in your status. You go from being an essential component of the process to a conditional one. You become the human in the loop, which sounds collaborative, but in reality, it's a demotion. It means you're nice to have, but you're maybe no longer strictly necessary to get from point A to point B.
And this is what that demotion looks like in your day-to-day work. Your primary function changes completely. The AI generates the first draft of the strategy, or the initial market analysis, or the primary legal argument. And your job transforms into being an overseer. You validate its output. You review its conclusions. You refine the rough edges. It's a move from the driver's seat to the passenger seat, where you're occasionally asked to just check the map. It is a fundamentally less powerful, less valuable position. And all the while, this is the new performance review that's running silently in the background of every organization. Your human contribution is being constantly and implicitly benchmarked against what the system can produce. And just look at these metrics on the table. It's brutal. Time to insight, hours or even days for human versus seconds for the AI. Volume of data processed, limited for us versus massive for it. Cost per analysis, high versus near zero. The comparison it's just stark. It's a dashboard that is not trending in our favor.
This is that moment where the water you're sitting in starts to boil. It's not one single event, but a slow, creeping realization of this new reality.
The moment an organization has a viable, faster, cheaper, and often more comprehensive alternative to your cognitive labor, your position is no longer secure by default. Your role now exists only under the condition that you can add a clear, demonstrable layer of value on top of what the system can already produce on its own. The burden of proof has officially shifted to you.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis, and it's a serious one. I know it can feel overwhelming, maybe even a bit hopeless, but it's not. The biggest mistake we could make is to keep fighting on the old battlefield.
Exactly. This isn't about working harder or just being a slightly faster analyst. The key is to stop fighting a battle you are mathematically guaranteed to lose. It's about a strategic pivot. It's about finding the new high ground where human skills still have a unique, defensible advantage.
And let's be perfectly, brutally clear about what that old battlefield is. You cannot and you will not win by competing on speed, on sheer volume of knowledge, or on the consistency of your output.
Trying to do that is like a person trying to outrun a supercar. It's not a question of effort or willpower. The game is fundamentally rigged against you. As the slide says, that entire layer of work, the processing layer, is being systematically optimized for machines, not for us.
This right here is the old world. This is where value used to be created and rewarded. Your entire job was to be a highly effective answer-generating machine. You took in a question, you processed the data, and you delivered a clean, neat output. And that paradigm, the very one that built entire professional careers for decades, is now a legacy system. Its value is in a state of rapid, terminal decline because it's being commoditized by technology. And this is the new high ground. This is the pivot we have to make. Your future relevance will not come from answering the questions anymore. It will come from defining which questions are even worth asking in the first place.
It's a move up the value chain. It's about getting away from just processing information and moving toward framing the problem correctly. getting away from just delivering outputs and toward driving the strategic direction. That is the layer where human judgment and wisdom and real context still hold a decisive edge, at least for now.
So as we wrap this explainer up, we want to leave you with this final thought. Look, the immediate challenge is about redefining your personal value, about shifting your skills to stay relevant.
But the next, even bigger challenge is already coming into focus on the horizon. And it's not just about which jobs will exist, it's a fundamental question of power and control. In a world where AI systems execute the analysis and recommend the solutions, the ultimate game is about who gets to sit at the control panel, who defines the objectives, who sets the constraints, and who ultimately steers the decisions for these incredibly powerful systems. That is the real power game of the coming decade.